Hi all, welcome to Trend Forecasting. Today we're going to go over chapter 9 lecture. So bear with me here. I'm going to share my screen. All right, as always, we are working out of Fashion Forecasting textbook. This is the 5th edition. You're now in part 3, which is forecasting in action, specifically chapter 9, and this is all about color and textile forecasting. Some objectives for this chapter is to describe the process of forecasting color, including color evolution, social and economic trends, consumer preferences, and other influences. Second is to identify the techniques forecasters use to synthesize color direction from signs in the cultural environment. Third is to understand the role of fiber and fabric trade organizations and fabric councils in disseminating trend information. And lastly is to recognize how print trends are expressed in terms of color, style, and effect. All right, so let's start with color forecasting. Color forecasts help manufacturers and retailers keep product lines fresh and new, modern and exciting. A color story or a color palette is a group of 8 to 10 selected colors based on a related theme or an idea or a story to sell a product. Color direction means an inclination or tendency towards a change in color temperature, value, intensity, or relative popularity of a hue. There are 2 leading professional color organizations in the United States. One is called the Color Association of the United States, CAUS, and the second one is the Color Marketing Group, CMG. So for some sources of color ideas and palettes and color names, we tend to look towards certain sources. To forecast color direction, forecasters observe the events that shape the zeitgeist, okay, and monitor the media to see what is holding customer or consumer attention. So we're looking at the sense of the times, we're looking at what has happened in a year, and we're seeing what colors affect consumers and how they're holding on to those colors. Color names are a form of labeling and can boost a color marketing appeal. So a name can really affect the popularity of color. Most color names come from associations in the environment, and the goal is to either depict a mood, paint a picture, tell a story, evoke a fantasy in the mind of a consumer. So when we think of, a color red, if it's just red, it's basic. But if we name that red Lamborghini red, automatically I'm thinking about luxury, I'm thinking about travel, I'm thinking about expensive cars and diamonds. My mind starts to create a story or a fantasy, right? And that automatically makes me associate a color like Lamborghini red with a certain lifestyle or an environment or mood. Color cycles. So color cycles prefer 2 phenomena. One is periodic shifts in color preferences, and the second is patterns of repetition in the popularity of colors. There's typically a time lag in a color cycle between the introduction of a new color or a new color direction and its acceptance. The adoption period standard for a group of colors evolves over a period of 10 to 12 years, reaching its peak mid-cycle, so around 5 to 6 years. Colors have somewhat predictable life cycles, and colors that were once popular can be repositioned in the future season by telling a different story about that color, naming it something new, pairing it with other colors in a different color palette. We can give a color that has already been used new life. So let's talk about long wave cycles. Researchers have confirmed a periodic swing from high chroma colors to multicoloredness to subdued colors to earth tones to achromatic colors to back to high chroma colors. So you can see this long wave cycle, how we start to, where we start in really high chroma, high intensity colors. We mix up those colors, we start to dull those colors down, then we start to gravitate from our environment, our earth tones, then we go to achromatic colors where we take out all the intensity in the chroma, and then once again, we go back into our high chroma colors. So it's this never ending cycle where we go through these different facets of color. Forecasting with color cycles. So we're applying a color cycle theory, takes insight and experience. Okay, you have to have experience with color to be able to really apply a certain theory. First theory we're going to talk about is long wave color cycles. So typically the general long wave color cycle sequence is helpful to forecasters who sense consumer boredom with the current offerings and seek the next acceptable evolution. So if we are around the 10 to 11 year period of having a color life cycle, a forecaster should know that our consumer is tending, maybe getting a little bit bored with that selection of color, and we should seek to offer that next acceptable evolution of color. We have a pendulum swing. This was introduced in 1994 by Everett Brown. It's identified of a cycle of approximately 7 years, so a little bit shorter, during which the pendulum swings between warm toned and then cool toned color. So maybe, every 7 years, we're going more towards warm and fall, autumn-like colors, and then we're swinging the pendulum back to more cool, winter type colors. We also have seasonal continuity. So every fall, leaf colors are perennial seasonal palette. Like when we talk about, October and that typical palette of greens and oranges and goldenrod yellows, right? That is something that has to do with the season. And then we take that inspiration from the season and create a color cycle with that. Same with every spring, right? We come out of winter where we're wearing a lot of black and dark colors, and we present a new spring forward color cycle. A lot of times we do that with a nautical theme like red, white, and blue, or a citrus or blooming flower color scheme. So I notice this in the way that I even do my nails. I know it sounds silly, but in winter, I'm doing deep reds or black or browns. And when I hit spring, when I hit around March, April, I'm tired of those colors and I want blues and greens and pinks. I want to kind of change the color cycle that I'm participating in. Consumers and color. So the Cooper Marketing Group in 1994 divides consumers into 3 categories, which mirror the bell curve of consumer acceptance. So we have 3 different categories of consumers, right? We know these from previous chapters: the fashion leaders, the majority, and the laggards. We also can identify that the fashion leaders are typically very forward in their color choices. They're typically moving on to a different color palette prior to the majority of the population. Okay, so color forwards often are considered fashion leaders, and this is the beginning of that color palette or color choice gaining popularity, right? They're the first to accept it. Then the majority accepts that color palette because they see the leaders using it. A great example of this is 2 years ago when that Bottega Bright Kelly Green was introduced to the market, and all the fashion leaders, influencers were using that color in their dress, right? And now we see it as the majority can find that Kelly green color, not only in luxury goods, but we can see it in knockoff purses, we can see it in shoes, we can see it in my earrings, right? And this is a majority of the people are now accepting that color into their life. And we call these people the color prudence. And then ultimately come the laggards. So once everyone has moved on from a color palette, the fashion leaders are already partaking in a new palette. The laggards are starting to really enjoy this color palette, and they are called the color loyals. So as it's leaving and the number of adopters are lessening. The formation of color preference. At 1941, a study showed that consistent order of color preferences in adults. Okay, the first choice was blue, followed by red, green, purple, yellow, and orange. Preference in gender, men and women reportedly differ in their color preferences. Preference in ethnicity. Okay, researchers support a relationship between color preference and ethnic identity or geographic region. Immigration can influence a color population. So when we think about someone that lives in India, New Delhi, and then someone that lives in Paris, France, are they wearing different colors? Are they choosing different colors? Is it partly because of where they live, what they're influenced by environmentally, also part of their culture, right? So preference with ethnicity also has a huge play. And then also color and age. Generation Y, most of you guys prefer bright colors more than baby boomers. So age, ethnicity, and gender really play a part in what we decide color is best for us, right? I'm considered a millennial. I probably have different color palettes in my wardrobe, my car color, the colors in my home compared to someone that is Gen X or Gen Y. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about textile forecasting. So fabric trends emerge before fashion trends because reviewing and selecting fabrics is one of the initial stages of product development. So we need to establish color trends and fabric trends and textile trends and pattern trends before the trend is actually there, because we need to establish this in order to manufacture and develop a product. The scheduling of textile development is a critical factor in the introduction of fashion products. So all of these things are decided upon way before the designer actually starts to design the product, because they eventually choose from these specific color palettes or textile designs and incorporate that into their design. Innovation in textiles. A fabric story is a seasonal trend in fabric, including texture, fabric properties, prints, novelty fabrics, and trims. So we'll see this play out within summer and winter, right? The fabric properties of the materials that we wear in winter and the prints and the novelty fabrics and the trims, lace and velvet, are very different than what we are partaking in, what we're wearing or purchasing in summer, right? Trade organizations are groups formed by fiber producers to promote the use of their fiber. So if you've ever heard of a trade show, they will have fiber producers, have salespeople that will promote the idea of this fiber or this fabric storing being really popular coming into 2023. Make sure you purchase this so that you're not left behind in the trends. Fabric libraries are a collection of seasonal fabric samples where designers and product developers come to research fabrications and source fabrics from many manufacturers. Let's talk about print shows. Okay, there was just one actually in downtown LA that I went to with another one of my schools. Really, really fun to see all of these people showing different prints. So they're basically artists that are producing prints or artwork that can be purchased by fashion companies, big brands or small brands, doesn't matter, so that you can incorporate that in your textiles. So directional trends for prints are typically found at shows featuring original artwork from studios or specific artists specializing in fabric design. Artwork from these artists can be purchased to inspire your future prints for your designs. Print Source New York is a famous market for textile design. So, you know, when we think about, you know, Urban Outfitters and all the, you know, the patterns that they have in their clothing, do they have an in-house artist that is specializing in fabric design, or are they purchasing already made artwork from artists and using that to inspire their prints? Fabric fairs and trade shows. So color, print, and fabric trends are first revealed at fabric fairs and trade shows. Sampling is ordering a minimum amount of fabric as a trial order. So you go to a fabric fair, you decide that you love these 7 fabrics, and you will order a minimum just to see if it works, to see if it fits in your story, to see if it fits in your color palette, your ideas, your innovations. You're basically kind of sampling the fabric to see if it'll work. Participants also attend seminars and presentations on developing trends presented by forecasters and consultants. Some shows include a display of trend colors and invite participants to clip samples. Major fabric shows. First is Premier Vision Paris, which that is one of the most influential trade shows, especially in Europe. It's typically held in February and September, so that kind of sets the tone a lot of times for print and fabric. Pitti Filati is a showcase in Florence held in January and July for the Italian yarn manufacturers. And Tex World USA is a sourcing event in New York held in January and June as well. Presentations. So at lower price points, designers and merchandise attend presentations that often include references to historical or ethnic sources of inspiration. Presentations may concentrate solely on fabric development or merge with color, fashion, and print forecasts. Something that is a part of presentations are fabric libraries, and these are collections of fabric swatches and trim samples representing the scope available for a specific and upcoming season. Some fabric libraries are maintained by trade organizations and represent current fabrics from many mills and converters. All right, that is the end for chapter 9, color and textile forecasting. Make sure you read the chapter. Thanks, guys.